Good day and welcome to a Guild Wars 2 video. In this video we are going to discuss the optimal settings for you as a player to use when it comes to your performance in Guild Wars. Now this will be broken up into multiple different optional settings, but there will be two main sections. The first will be setting up your user interface and your interactability keys, and then the second one will mainly be your key bindings. You will see timestamps in the description for the various sections. It's going to be a little bit of a long video, but if you can bear with me, it's going to really help you. So let us begin. The first settings that we will focus on will be under the general options settings. We will go through the list from top to bottom and try to explain the most crucial picks. So let's start with our user interface. You can select your text and audio language, profanity filter, etc. all up to you. When it comes to content guide, if you're a new player, you can leave it on default. Otherwise, if you're an experienced player, it's suggested to put it off. I also suggest clicking ignore previous completed objectives if you want to clean up your screen and minimap and overall flow. In terms of the loot options, we are going to take a look at AoE loot on interact. This allows you to press your interact key and pick up multiple instances of loot from multiple enemies without having to constantly rapidly press it. We'll have show all NPC names, show all player names, show all usable object names, which is helpful for when you are looking for smaller items on the floor or in rooms, show skill recharge, show target health percentage, hide optional announcements, and thick party health bars. All of this will, generally speaking, help to improve visibility, simplicity, and cleaning up of your screen. In terms of character select background, you can have whatever you want. I just like Cantha. Next, we're going to move on to the dynamic HUD. In terms of the dynamic HUD, what is super important here is understanding that we are looking mainly at cleaning up our screen. So, for example, our menu bar, which is at the top here, will be shown only out of combat. What's great with this is if, for example, we go and get into combat with an enemy, it will help to clean up our screen, allowing us to kind of have a better view of the battlefield overall. So as you can see here, the moment I enter into combat, you can see that the menu bars begin to disappear. Of course, you can set more and more to kind of move off. You can also have the objectives show only out of combat if you want, although this for me is not so important because when I look at the objectives, even when I am performing combat, I do kind of like to know what is happening. So I wouldn't really overall suggest it, but you can see that it can all help to clean up your screen quite a bit. So from there, obviously you can have rewards as well. This will clean up any rewards you get, and you can set anything. The only ones I would really do would be objectives, rewards, and menu bar. So that's really about it. And then show ally names, keybind, which is all pretty good stuff. Next we'll move on to the camera options. So when it comes to the camera options, your game tends to start here. For rotation speed, this is very painful because you have to move your mouse a lot of times to kind of rotate around your character. Very strange. So what we do here is we're going to push this up, which allows us to really kind of rotate our mouse way easier around our character for visibility. A lot of these settings are for mouse play. So what that means for people who don't know, you move your character with your mouse. So you hold left and right click so that you're able to move your character, and you actually move your mouse to move their direction and their screen. This is important because when we map things like strafe later on, that's going to help us with combat movement. Anyway, getting back to the camera settings, all of this is to help with setting up the positioning of the mouse. It just centralizes the character, allows you to really kind of have a solid functionality with them, and field of view is really to give yourself that nice view of the battlefield. Disabling camera shake, enabling camera teleportation, and using free camera or just useful tools that really help you in terms of being able to battle on a fair playing field. And enabling first person view is also just great if you're needing to focus on things nice and squarely. So yeah, pretty decent stuff, I would say. By the way, we can see that AoE coming in clutch. Next, we're going to move on to the next section of our options. So we're going to move on to combat movement options and settings. So if we go down, that is the next step here. So we have our combat movement options. So firstly, you will have double tap to evade set immediately. You're going to untick this. Why? If you've ever done a jumping puzzle and accidentally pressed forward twice, you will know exactly why double tap to evade is off. Although it can seem useful in the beginning, it's actually more of a hindrance because a lot of the times, especially if you're doing sensitive movement around jumping puzzles or certain areas of the game, you're going to end up double tapping and just kind of throwing yourself out of the area. Disable area of effect rings, not advisable. Double click to attack or interact, very advisable. Right click to attack or interact, of course. A lot of these are very simple. Stop auto attacking on target change is going to be helpful as it allows you to control everything. And then locking ground target at maximum range and snapping ground target to current target is all important. Now what that means is when you have a spell that targets a certain area. So if, for example, I wanted to use, maybe it is my, I don't know if this character actually has, I think we do. There is a, there. So you see these spells that have little target icons. So these spells here have the ability to target certain areas. Now with these settings that we have on here, when we are using these abilities, they're going to snap immediately to the max location when you are targeting someone. So if the target you have, for example, if my target is that brown cow, and I'm now trying to use my ability, it will immediately snap target to the maximum range. The reason this is great is because it allows you to chase characters a lot better, PvP, etc. Positioning is just much better overall. Otherwise, everything else is pretty explanatory, should really help you. And from here, you can also disable skill highlighting for disabling combo finishes if you're a bit more experienced. Leave this on if you're a new player. Don't panic about switching this off if you're not. But if you are more experienced, you'll understand combat field effects, understanding combos, understanding might stacking, etc. You won't be so reliant on the highlighted indicator. But of course, if you're new, it's okay to leave it on. It's just going to be ultimately up to you as a player. So next, we're going to shift into our competitive options and settings. This is mainly to assist us with some of our PvP aspects, and this will be the last sections that we'll tackle under the general option settings. Enemy colors on only for team colors. Disable standard enemy models. Disable standard enemy friendly models. WPW simple nameplates, enemies only. Untick these. Streaming, content streaming. Don't panic about this, does not matter. And then groups, you can have hide none, simple party UI, and then for mount you can enable camera roll. That's really about it. Don't have to worry about anything else. All of your general options are now covered. This will make moving way easier, it will make targeting abilities way easier, and it will clean up your screen well enough to make sure that your visibility in the game is at its absolute peak. The next things we're going to focus on are going to be some of the focal points when it comes to the control options and keybinds, as this will help us with our competitiveness and our mobility. When it comes to the keybinds, please understand that I have already adjusted the keybinds to being the better options. If you are obviously looking for something in a specific way, you can maybe leave a comment, but generally I've changed them already. So if you just want to kind of pause the video and change these, you're welcome to. Of course, I will try my best to go through them a little bit to explain why some of them have changed. So the big one is this. Originally, your strafe left and right are not set to your A and D keys. Why this is done this way? So when you play with your mouse, by having your strafe keys on your character and having the ability to move your character and strafe them while moving your mouse, you give yourself the ability to kind of move in a range of movement that is diagonal. When you do not have those keys mapped there, your character turns. So what this means is your character kind of does this, which is hard to do now without it on. But your character basically just turns in a circle. And this slows down your responsibility or your ability to respond to actions in the game. In terms of dodge, you want to map this to mouse 4 if you have a mouse that has that ability. Otherwise, if you're someone who's playing with a standard mouse set, you can put it down to V if you want to. But ideally, you want to slap that dodge onto your mouse 4. That's going to be your best bet, and honestly is probably your best choice. So mouse 4, mouse 3, whatever you got that extra button on your mouse, you can map it up. Then from there, everything else is pretty straightforward and shouldn't seem any crazy. If you wonder what about face is, just means that if your camera is set somewhere, you can press about face and the character will face wherever your camera is focused on. Next, in terms of key bindings, we're going to kind of move into the skill key bindings. This is obviously very important. Skill key bindings are crucial, and they're one of the areas where when you change them at first you're going to feel the most uncomfortable, especially if you've been playing the entire time with your skills in a certain way. If you've been doing the whole 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 etc. The reason why we change these keys is because we want the keys to be on the most responsible or the most rapidly responsive keys that we have. We move with WASD. By having an ability on G, we can simply move our finger slightly to the right. By having an ability on Q, we can simply move our finger slightly up to the left. By having an ability on Z, we can simply move our finger down slightly. By having an ability on X, we can also move our finger down slightly. And by having the ability, which you see here on 0, but by having the abilities mapped as such, you can give yourself a much better time. Now, when it comes to your abilities, this one should be mapped to E. Why I haven't mapped to 0. So you can map this to E if you want, and then you can map this to X. It's just a lot better. So by doing this, you give yourself the ability to hit your keys immediately while you are moving without having to move your second hand or move your right hand, etc. The rest of the skills are pretty straightforward and pretty simple, and have also all been adjusted for ease of movement. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to be able to do everything as quickly as possible. So we always want to be able to do everything essentially with our left hand. That's the main goal of setting up our skill keybinds. Next, we're going to talk about targeting. So targeting is one that you're going to have to get used to, and depends a lot more on how much you play MMOs than anything else. But the 3 targeting buttons you will use the most and should be remapped immediately are going to be next enemy, previous enemy, and nearest ally. The reason for this is quite simple. This is how you're going to target enemies. So by pressing tab, you will be able to shift through. Pressing shift tab will take you to the previous one, and pressing shift Q will take me to my nearest ally. This is great if I'm a healer looking to target my allies. Of course, understanding the other targeting effects is very important. Alert target, call target, take target, nearest target, next enemy, nearest ally, lock auto target. All of this is super helpful, but it's something you're going to get more experience with the more you use it, more so than trying to just flatline, just use it for no reason. Practice using it, try them out, and see how you feel with them. But ultimately, your 3 most important will be your tab, shift tab, and shift Q. Next, we took a look at user interface. This isn't anything too crazy. These are your menu screens. The reason we've made some changes here is obviously because of rebinding some of the other keys. So we've had the kind of necessary requirement to move a couple buttons. For example, scoreboard used to be mapped to some of the buttons we're using above, like B. So we have to remap it somewhere so that we can obviously access that screen if we want to. Of course, you can always manually click a ton of these screens, but it's just remapping some of the shortcuts if you're someone who really likes to get into shortcuts. Then we'll move into camera. So when it comes to camera settings, this is where obviously nothing too crazy to change here. All of this is fairly simple and straightforward. The rest of this honestly isn't too much of a big issue. I think if you look at all of these, most of these are just kind of flatline things that players may or may not want to change or adjust. For me, the only real focal points are things like the interact key, making sure that your interact key is on F, and if you have it obviously set to auto loot, you don't have to set an AoE loot key. If you want to keep that separate, you can. But really, there's nothing I'd say here that you need to focus on. If you want to shift quickly between builds, I do suggest, however, Shift H, Shift J, Shift J, and Shift K. This just allows you to shift between build templates quickly. I don't suggest having a ton of build templates or equipment templates, but these do help you out. Of course, I'm just going to quickly hover over each screen so that you can take a look at the various settings. So we'll just hover over camera, screenshot, map, mounts, and spectators. Then we'll map over squads, mastery skills, miscellaneous, and templates. That pretty much covers everything you need to know around about the graphical settings, or sorry, the key binding settings and the general options. All of these will help you out a ton with your gameplay. So if you make these changes and you practice them and you get used to them, you are pretty much 100% going to have a much easier time. It'll feel weird at first, but I promise you it will be much better overall. But that's it from me. See you guys next time. Bye.